everyone. So we're going to start our afternoon session. This afternoon we're going to have the Department for Work and Pensions. So I'm going to hand over to Mitch Chambers, who's a statistician with the survey branch team at the Department for Work and Pensions, who's going to chair this session.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Jen. So, hi everyone, I'm Mitch and I'm going to be chairing the session today. Let me figure out how the slides work. Perfect. Does the clicker work? Yeah, clicker does work, okay. So yeah, today you're going to hear from colleagues across not only surveys branch, but also wider analytical colleagues from across DWP who work on family finance related projects. I should point out that while Surveys Branch produces the FRS and other related outputs, they're not responsible for all surveys produced by DWP. And yeah, so you'll hear from a range of people today. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Joanna Littlechild for an introduction.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. And Mitch pinched my best line. I normally have to say I'm not responsible for all surveys in DWP. He took that line from me today. But obviously, so good to see everybody today here. Really good to be here for this hybrid event this time. I'm hoping that colleagues online were able to have a good lunch themselves. I know we'd had a good lunch here, and I hope colleagues had the opportunity to have those conversations across lunch break as well in that case. So let me just see in terms of the introduction here then in that case. Yep. Okay, excellent. So this session, as we said, it's going to focus on DWP's stats developments and latest releases. And let's just say this is going to be a real team effort. So please just bear with us as colleagues are coming up to the platform to talk about their particular project or development. Just a reminder before we start that we will not be talking about any policy developments today. We're obviously focusing on the stats and the research side of things. Before we outline some of those specific developments on particular projects, I just want to remind you of a couple of ways that you can find out about the latest information on DWP statistics developments. For updates during the year across all DWP stats, you can look at the DWP Statistical Work Programme, which is updated every month. And for the FRS-based stats, we've got a specific FRS release strategy, which is also updated when there are updates to share. As we go through the updates today, there should be some team-specific mailboxes highlighted. If you want to follow up on any of the projects in more detail, do drop us a line. And again, before going into the specific projects, to support user engagement generally, DWP stats producers are encouraged to publicise their releases on Stats User Network. The forum was launched earlier in 2025, so it is still relatively new, and it replaces Stats Usernet, which some of you may have been familiar with. So this isn't just a DWP initiative, this is GSS branded and funded and supported by ONS. Overall, it's a discussion forum for users and producers of official statistics, so do follow the link to sign up and set up a profile if you're interested. So we've got, obviously a number of developments and different relevant projects in DWP for this particular event today. Unfortunately, representatives from all of the relevant DWP stats projects weren't able to be here today. So before we go into the other projects, I've just got a couple of brief updates to share on behalf of a couple of projects themselves. But if you do want more information on these, please contact the email addresses here. I don't have any more information on these particular projects. I just need to make that clear for everybody. Children in low-income families, that's the admin-based complementary stats to households below average income, which you'll hear more about later. So just a reminder that their consultation on developing after-housing cost measures is still open until the end of July. So if you are interested in that development, do take a look at the website to find out more, and then feedback any thoughts to the team via the mail inbox for the end of the month. So do take a look at that if you're interested in that particular topic. And some of you may have previously contributed to the Below Average Resources publication consultation last year. The response to that consultation was published in January, and further updates will be made via the statistical work programme on that particular project. So just a couple of other projects that I wanted to mention to people attending here today. And now I'm handing over to Mitch, who's going to introduce the Family Resources Survey itself. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joanna. So yeah, again, I'm Mitch. I'm currently working in the Family Resources Survey team. Just before I actually dive into the content, I'll point out that the slides are going to be shared online as well, and our team inbox is on the slide here if anybody has any questions, which they don't raise today but would like to do so in future. So the Family Resources Survey, we produce our statistics in line with the principles outlined in the Code of Practice. And so there's 3 core pillars to this: TQV, trustworthiness, quality and value. So our release strategy continues to give transparency on our plans for future years to users. Again, linked on the slide here if anybody wishes to look at that. When it comes to quality, the FRS remains a large-scale survey with a large pool of respondents, nearly 16,800 households in last year's sample. And we continue to place a keen focus on accuracy, face-to-face interviewing wherever possible, reference to documents wherever possible, and, as you'll hear about later on, an increasing usage of admin data. And when it comes to value, we continue to focus on concepts which are core to the DWP policy arena. So the ones which spring to mind are income from both work and earnings, pensions, state benefit receipt, and other sources of income. Characteristics such as demographics, tenure, disability, childcare, and also other facets such as pension participation, household food security, and material deprivation, which you'll hear more about a little bit later on. So when it comes to the state of play and the release we've just published, that is the 2023-24 Family Resources Survey. We make our data available to the public through a wide range of means. So we publish our headline findings to the public on gov.uk. If you're an analyst who wants to produce your own FRS-based statistics, but you don't want to delve into the micro data, then DWP Stat Explore tool is used for you to do this. And there's also a user guide published if you wish to use that. Or perhaps you're a researcher who Stat Explorer doesn't quite meet your needs and you do need to delve into the micro data. If that is the case, then it's available on the UK Data Services website and also the ONS Secure Research Service. So when it comes to new aspects of 2023-24, there's a couple of areas to point out. So material deprivation, data from both the old and new questions on the dataset are available. When it comes to new variables, there's a few areas on armed forces, care leavers, doctors, and additional food variables. And as you'll also have heard earlier today on Scottish child payment, we undertook quite extensive consultation with the Scottish Government to improve our imputation for this, leading to increased precision in our estimates of income in Scotland. I should also point out that we've took an evolved approach to background information. So we used to just publish a background information and methodology report. We now consider the actual quality of the data and the end-to-end process of data collection separately in the quality assessment report, and hopefully, if you haven't already, then the link is there to have a look at that. We've also got a new training module we have, if you do wish to use the micro data, called Getting Started with the FRS. So this is new training designed to support users of the FRS micro data. And even perhaps you're a new user of the FRS, perhaps you're an established user. This is a really valuable resource through 2 to 3 years of collaboration between UKDS and DWP. It's free, interactive and user-friendly. And there's also self-test knowledge quizzes included, and our thanks must go to Anna Britton in the FRS team for her work on this. So looking ahead then, what are our plans for 2025? So our sample size for 2024-25 survey year is looking to be around 16,300 households. The composition of that sample continues to be primarily face-to-face, so we'll only use telephone interviewing where it's necessary to secure an interview. And you've heard a little bit early from ONS on plans to improve field capacity. There's a couple of areas of quite big change that I should point out. So the big one is on the refresh of council tax variables. So the key point here is that council tax band is no longer asked to interview. So what we do now is we have editor input for this and quality assurance using valuation list data. This will be manually for 24-25, but it gives us a really strong pathway to admin linking in future, and also reduces the burden upon FRS respondents. There's a couple of new areas of data collection this year. So we're now going to be collecting income on collective defined contribution pension schemes, which are increasing in usage across the UK. When it comes to childcare, we're now going to be distinguishing between typical term time and school holiday childcare. And also, in line with other surveys and the census, we've also harmonised our questions on marital status. So I believe that's it for the FRS team. There'll be an opportunity for questions about halfway through this presentation from me. But for now, I'll hand over to the HBAI team and Joe and Dawn.
Well, I'll just do it on here. It's fine. Okay, thank you. So I'm Joe Cockerham and this is Dawn McDonagh, and we're both on the HBAI team in Surveys branch at DWP. There's our link there, and as Mitch said, any general questions can go to our team inbox after the session. We look at those individuals living in low-income households, in material deprivation, combined low-income and material deprivation, household food security status and food bank usage, and we look at income inequality by deciles, quintiles, percentiles, etc. And we are slightly different to the statistics that ONS talked about earlier. There are differences in our sources. We use the FRS as our underlying data source. It's still not clicking. Okay, so HBAI data is available from 94-95 to 23-24. And as I said, its underlying source is the FRS. We meet DWP's statutory obligation to publish a measure of relative and absolute low income and combined low income and material deprivation for children, and this is a legal requirement under the Welfare Reform Act 2016. We produce annually our main findings in a report, and also we have a quality and information methodology report, as well as published tables, all available via gov.uk, and links are there. Still not clicking. Still not clicking. Why isn't it working? Still not clicking. Sorry. This is... But even just clicking, that's... Oh, that did something there. Okay.
So it does.
Yeah, that's fine there. So it's working now. Okay, sorry. So you can also, as Mitch was saying earlier, for FRS data, our data is also available on Stat Explore, and again through the UK Data Service, and we've got a comprehensive user guide as well. And there's our team mailbox for any further queries. Okay, so just to give a few headline results now to give you a flavour, comparing our latest figures to the previous year. So the first chart shows the income distribution for all individuals. and it's equivalised net household income in £10 bands, and it shows deciles in alternate shading. And we saw that there was a 2% decrease overall in weekly real terms median incomes between the last 2 years. And then the other chart on the right is showing median weekly household incomes before and after housing costs. And as you can see, they've dropped slightly as well compared to 23-24. And there was a 2% decrease in both measures in real terms. Note these changes weren't found to be statistically significant, and so although they're different from the ONS figures we saw earlier, there's kind of reasons for that. Okay, some further results here. The first chart shows the percentage of individuals living in relative low-income households. So that's households with weekly incomes below 60% of the median after housing costs. And this is for the main groups that we're interested in and we report on in our annual publication, the children, working age and pensioners, and those with a disability. So the percentage of individuals in relative low income before and after housing costs remained about the same, but the proportion of individuals in absolute low income before housing costs increased, after housing costs stayed about the same. For working aged adults, it stayed broadly flat. And again, for pensioners, broadly flat for relative before housing costs, but for absolute pensioner poverty, the rates did show increases. But our largest increases across all the measures were seen for children. And also the percentage of children in food insecure households increased compared to other groups, which remained stable. So yeah, the other chart is just showing an example of the children in low income, showing the absolute low income before and after housing costs, and you can see that did go up noticeably. So just quickly, so I'm aware of the interruptions. So for our 23-24 publication, just things to note that were new this time. So we had a review of the material deprivation measures, as mentioned earlier, which Dawn will talk about. We had cost of living support schemes, warm home discount and Scottish winter heating payments were included in measures of household income, and there was a minor correction for cost of living payments was implemented. We reinstated 3-year averages for regional and ethnicity estimates in our publication. We'd used 2-year averages for the previous period just due to COVID. And also we reinstated the educational attainment variable, which had had an issue previously. And looking forward, we're going to revise HBAI data from 2018-19 because we'll be implementing the use of admin data, which Don will be talking about a bit later. And we will be taking on, because of our underlying data is FRS, so any FRS improvements will then be seen in our data. So, for example, questionnaire changes. We will also be making a change to the absolute low income reference year. We've announced this in the FRS release strategy, and that's changing from 2011 at the moment to bring it to 24, 25, because there's going to be a break in the data series anyway due to the linking of admin data. And we'll also be revising education outputs for our historical data sets where we had to withdraw the data before. So that's a forward look, sorry. And I'll hand you to Dawn.
Hello, I'm Dawn. I'm going to talk about the updated material deprivation measures. So material deprivation is a direct measure of poverty based on the lack of everyday items. So the FRS respondents are asked a series of questions about access to goods and services, and then HBAI uses these questions to produce material deprivation measures and report on these estimates alongside our other low income and poverty measures. So the OSR carried out a review of income-based poverty statistics, and this was published in May 2021. And following the recommendations, DWP, along with the London School of Economics and Political Science, conducted a review of the UK material deprivation measures and the associated FRS questions. And the LSC review was published in March 2024, and there's a link to it there. So following the review, the updated questions were added to the FRS 23-24 questionnaire, and at the same time, the DWP updated the methodology to measure material deprivation for 23-24 publication. So I just wanted to say that this update to the material deprivation measures involved close and successful collaboration across DWP, with LSC, with our FRS expert advisory group, the devolved governments, and many, many more people that I haven't had a chance to say out loud, but we sincerely thank everybody for their contributions to this project. So, what are the key updates to material deprivation from 23-24? There are 29 updated questions that better reflect the current necessities, with now core household questions and reasons for lacking an item for all groups available. Question routing was also improved to collect more accurate reasons for lacking an item. So in terms of how you define a lacked item, only items lacked due to a financial constraint, such as do not have money for this or not a priority on current income, are counted, and this is consistent across all groups. And just to say, there are a small number of questions that if you respond no, then you're considered to lack the item as well. So this is a difference to the previous methodology where for the pensioner measure, wider reasons were also included in the definition of lacking an item. So the material deprivation thresholds. We've moved to a simple count approach where if you lack 4 or more items for a child, then you're in material deprivation, 5 or more items for working age adult material deprivation, and 4 or more items for pensioner material deprivation. So we've moved to a simple count method, which is easier for users to understand compared to our previous prevalence weighted score. And as part of the recommendations, we've extended the number of measures that we present in our report and publication tables to be comparable across all the different groups, and also ensuring consistency in all our material deprivation measures. And there's also a very, very detailed technical report. It's over 100 pages long, and it explains all the decisions that underpin the updated measures, and also an assessment of the break in the time series between 22-23 and 23-24. So I encourage you to take a look, because it was a labour of love. So to some headline results. For 23-24, the estimates based on our updated measures for individuals in material deprivation was 28% for children, 23% for working age adults, and 11% for pensioners. And a part of our development was to make sure we could be quite transparent and clear in how we presented these estimates. So the chart on the right-hand side presents the break in the time series with a dotted line in 23-24. And we do advise users not to make a direct comparison between the 23-24 estimate and the previous ones, because it's based on different questions and a different methodology. And so finally, just wanted to talk about the impact. The updated methodology aims to provide measures of material deprivation that use updated questions that are more relevant to society today, and improved data collection methodology, a transparent, simple count approach to counting the number of items lacked, and also a consistent definition of lacking an item across the different groups. And so again, I'd refer you to the detailed technical report for more information, or please get in touch with me via the team mailbox, and I'd be happy to explain more in detail. Thank you. I'm just going to pass over to Kate. Hopefully it's working now. Just that one.
Hiya, so I'm Kate Martin. I lead the team that creates 2 publications, Pensioners' Incomes and also Take-Up of Income-Related Benefits. And you can see there the 2 links to each of those publications, but also the individual team shared inbox if you've got any questions about each of those publications as well. So both these 2 publications are based on the FRS data as well, and I'll talk about the latest results and headline findings in each of them. A bit of an introduction about pensioners' incomes first. So this is an annual accredited official statistics publication, and it reports on pensioners' incomes from the FRS. It covers over time from 94-95 until the latest release included 23-24. And they look at how much income pensioners get each week, so often looking at the average weekly amount that they receive and where they get that income from. So we break it down looking at whether it's from occupational pension or from earnings or benefits or investment income and different types of earnings like that. And we look at how this changes over time and any variations between different types of pensioners. So we often break it down by family type, so looking at pensioner couples and comparing it to single pensioners. The estimates are normally based on around 7,000 pensioners in private households in the UK, but for the latest year there were 6,300 pensioner units in the sample. And as with the other publications, you can get more granular detail, there's lots of tables in the PI statistics, but you can get even more granular in StatExplore and different breakdowns, but also from the UK Data Service as well. And similar to the other publications, we include the cost of living payments within our latest 2 publications. We have done and we do add new tables to the publication where there's added value to it. There isn't currently in the public domain plans to add new tables to the next publication, but we will obviously be feeding in the developments that have been discussed by the FRS team and that feed into HBAI ones as well. So looking at pensioners' income's latest results, so this just shows the weekly income of pensioners after housing costs, so it's covering from that time period 94-95 until 23-24. And we can see that there has been an increase since 94-95, which was statistically significant. It went from £206 to £407 for all pensioners in the latest year, and that's in 2024 prices. And but then we can see that it has kind of stabled since 2010. So then we've seen that increase since 95. It's reached kind of stable level since 2010. And then looking at single pensioners and pensioner couples, we can see for couples more than double amount that they've received in the latest year. So on average, they would get £595 per week, and single pensioners would get £282. So then looking at our income-related benefits estimates of take-up publication. So this is an annual statistical publication. This one, whereas the pensioners' incomes is published in March every year with FRS and HBAI, this one is published every September and October, and this looks at the take-up of pensioner benefits. So it refers to the receipts of benefits someone is entitled to, so we look at caseload, so for those who are entitled, what proportion are actually receiving it, but also from expenditure, from the proportion that could be claimed, how much is being claimed. And as I say, we use FRS data for this as well, but with this we already match to admin data. So we already look at whether someone in our admin data is receiving pension credit or housing benefit to better identify if someone is a recipient. And then we also can estimate eligible non-recipients from our survey data. So as I say, we've got pension credit there. So we see 65% of those who are eligible are claiming pension credit in the latest publication year, which was 22-23. That's a bit of an increase from the year before. And 78% of the actual amount they could claim has been claimed. So what that suggests is that those who have more to claim are more likely to claim the benefit. And then looking at housing benefit for pensioners, we can see about 83% of those eligible are claiming, and 86% of the actual amount is being claimed as well. So as I say, that was the pensioner benefits publication, and in the last few years we haven't included working age estimates, and the reason for this is the complexity of estimating from moving from a legacy system to a universal credit system, where you have different eligibility rules and different amounts that people are eligible for. And what we want to do is, rather than just show the legacy or the universal credit estimates, which wouldn't give a complete measure at this time, we want to show a composite measure where we're looking at overall what is working age take-up. And currently, so this is something that we're developing, and of course UC rollout will be finishing at the end of this year, so March 2026. But given the first full year we'd report on universal credit take-up is 26-27, and with our publication timeline, that would be published in October 2028. So we obviously want to get something out sooner, so that's why we're developing this, this measure in the interim of working age take-up. So there isn't currently a publication date in the public domain, but as and when we do have any updates, we'll include that in our release strategy document, which is on the publication page, and we'll also update our Stats Work programme as well. And that's it for me, so I think I'm passing to you, Betty.
Great, thank you, Kate. Hello everyone, my name is Priti. I'll be presenting on the income dynamic statistics that were published in March of this year. Cool. So income dynamics differs from the other surveys being presented on this session, as it's based on a longitudinal analysis. We use data from the Understanding Society survey, which is managed by the University of Essex, to present findings on persistent low income, as well as movements into and out of low income and across the wider income distribution. This year we included Wave 14 of the Understanding Society survey, with our analysis covering the period of 2010 to 2023. So one of the key metrics that income dynamics looks at is persistent low income, and to clarify here, persistent low income is defined as anyone in relative low income for at least 3 out of 4 consecutive years, and this is also noted below the chart. Understanding the persistence of low income is very important because evidence has shown that the longer an individual stays in poverty, the worse their associated outcomes are. If we look at the chart here, this outlines the most recent 4-wave period against the previous 4-wave period for all of our key demographics. That would be children, working age adults, pensioners, and all individuals on the right-hand side for comparison. And the blue bars are showing us before housing costs, and the orangey peachy bars are showing us after housing costs. So for before housing costs, the overall rates of persistent low income were 10%, compared to it being 9% in all previous waves. This change was also observed among children and pensioners, with rates increasing from 11 to 12% for both groups. And rates remained the lowest for the working age adults at 8%. Considering after housing costs, the overall rate remained unchanged at 12% for all individuals, and this was also seen among children, who were still most likely to be in persistent low income, with a rate of 18%. It was also unchanged for the working age adults, who remained at 11%, and for pensioners this increased slightly from 10 to 11%. So another measure we look at is entries and exits, and that is short-term movements into and out of relative low income, again taken as 60% below the median income, the same as persistent low income. So while the actual numbers of individuals who entered into and exited from low income across the period of 21-22 to 22-23 were similar, both before housing costs and after housing costs, the actual rates of entry and exit are very different, and this is because the rates of exit are based on a much smaller denominator, so essentially anyone that was in persistent low income in 21-22. So on the left, we can see that children are the most likely to enter low income compared to working age adults or pensioners, both before and after housing costs. Whereas if we look at the chart on the right, it shows that working age adults are generally more likely to exit from low income than children or pensioners. Additionally, our analysis shows how different household level changes can be associated with these movements, and this year we found that changes in earnings, benefits, and employment are closely linked to these movements, as well as the change in number of full-time workers being more closely linked, and more so than any amount of work changes in amount of work, or changes to working status. So that would be changes from a working household to a not working household and vice versa. So in addition to short-term movements, we also look at longer-term income mobility, and to do this we look at income quintiles to consider the mobility across the full income distribution. So on the right, we have a Sankey diagram, which shows the individual income distribution split into 5 equally sized groups. So the top quintile, quintile 5, is the population with the highest income, and quintile 1 is the one with the lowest. So when comparing the position of individuals in 22-23 to their position in 2015-2016, we can see that the most movement occurs towards the middle of the distribution, while there's less movement across the top and the bottom. So moving on from our findings, what's next for income dynamics? We're currently preparing for the next publication, which includes Wave 15 Understanding Society data, and we're also working on some presentational changes, including revising our tables to meet accessibility best practice guidelines. And that concludes income dynamics. We have our email listed there if you have any further questions, and also a link to our publication, which has more analysis in that. And I believe I'm passing back to Mitch for questions.
Yeah, without further ado then, what I'm sure you've all been waiting for all day, I'll hand over to Don Burke on admin data.
Thanks, Mitch. No pressure then. Just see if I can get this going. So, hi, I'm Don Burke, and I head up the team that's been working for quite some time on researching and developing means of integrating administrative data into the FRS. So I'll give you a little bit on the background to the project and what our objectives are, where we've got to now, and what we're going to be doing in the lead up to March 26, when we're hoping to do some implementation. So we moved from consent to public task as the legal basis for linking with the introduction of GDPR in 2018. And this means that we can link all respondents versus 66% when we had an explicit consent question. And now we successfully managed to link 95% of respondents. And we link by using name, date of birth and postcode, respondent's name, date of birth and postcode to our customer information system. And that's the database with every national insurance number and up-to-date address information for everybody who's had a national insurance number issued. So we have, so the lookup file then consists of the key personal identifiers on the FRS, surname, benefit unit, and person, and then with NINO attached as well. So all of the main admin data sets that we've got then have got national insurance numbers, so that provides the key to link respondents to the administrative data. So we have 95% lookup files from 2018-19 for GB, and from 2021 for the UK. So the aim of the use of administrative data, transformative, we hope, use of administrative data, is to integrate all of the core data sets that we've got covering the core topics of the FRS, all of the DWP benefits, child maintenance, HMRC, RTI information, self-assessment, and child benefit. So key and first, what we're looking to do is to eliminate the long-standing undercount of benefits and tax credits on the FRS, improve the accuracy of employment and self-employment income, and analytical power by adding extra information that we can get from the admin data sources. And then we're also looking ultimately long-term to reduce respondent burden and reduce costs as well, because with the integration of all of these sources, we're hoping to be able to drop most of the monetary questions from the survey and reduce the time considerably. And yes, we're also hoping to improve timeliness by doing this, because we won't have to do all of the intensive editing we do currently with all of the monetary questions. And a lot of these administrative sources are available in a timely fashion quite soon after the end of the survey reference period. So we published our research results on integrating benefits in March 2024, and this shows that linking respondents in itself resolves just about half of the benefit undercount, and I'll go into the details on this in a few more slides, and that we can resolve the remainder through the use of additional grossing controls. So we're now planning to implement this approach in our FRS-based publications, all of the publications based on the FRS that we've been discussing already today. from March 26 and publishing a revised back series at the same time. We're also continuing to work on HMRC data in particular, RTI and self-assessment. And critically now, we do have a commitment from HMRC to give us that data and the permission to integrate it into the survey on an ongoing annual basis. So we'll update the DWP Statistical Work Programme and the FRS release strategy on this as our plans develop. As I said, the plan now is that we're going to, the information that we published last year on benefits, we're going to implement that approach into the FRS from March 2026. So I'm just going to go through some of the outline of the work we've done on this and how it's going to work in practice. Table M6 from the FRS publication, published every year, outlines pretty clearly and starkly the undercount that we've got on the FRS. So the grossed FRS counts we've got on the left-hand side there, and the actual admin counts across the benefits, the main DWP benefits towards the right, and then you can see the undercount in red. For example, with pension credit being 27% undercount, and universal credit at 30%, attendance allowance at 44% undercount. So that's despite all of the work that's been done over many years to try and improve the way that we capture benefit receipt from respondents and the work that we do post-collection on cleaning and editing. So particularly, I mentioned attendance allowance because there's such an undercount is a good example. Oh, sorry, I will, before I do that, that's the next slide. So our approach to linking then is to link them to the admin sources. We link them to the admin sources using the lookup file. We select those in receipt of benefit at the time of the interview, and then we receive the amounts that they've actually been we retrieve the amounts that they've actually been receiving from the central payment system at the time of interview. And then we go through a segmentation exercise for each linking, and then we have an imputation routine that we've developed, which we're looking to use long term for those that we haven't been able to link, and then create the admin-based benefits and related tables on the FRS. So that's the approach we're taking. And then with attendance allowance as an example. So as you can see just on the left, we've got a 95% match rate, link rate, linking 37,000 respondents in 22-23 that this example is based on. And then we've got the 5% that are not linked. And then when we link to the attendance allowance administrative records, everything breaks down basically into 6 segments. So if you're unlinked, you're either self-reporting the benefit, or you're not. And then for the linked cases, people are either reporting and we don't find them on the administrative records, there's agreement, or we're picking up extra through the linking process. So you can see there's relatively small numbers of positive reporting with attendance allowance, 20,000 when you gross it using our current grossing regime. And then you've got a large chunk, 820,000, where there's agreement, the gross estimate, and then we're picking up nearly 400,000 extra additional through the linking process. So our intention then is, of course, that we'll drop the positive matches, use the segments 4 and 5 then as our basis for the attendance allowance estimates. And then we'll use, ultimately, its imputation for the unlinked cases. We're having a debate at the moment, since we're still collecting the survey responses. We'll probably use the survey responses when we're publishing in March 26, but ultimately we're looking to impute. So then, the interesting thing about this when we were doing it is that even with the linking, our grossed estimate for attendance allowance is 1.4 million, 1.2 million, and the actual caseload is 1.4 million. So we're not able to close the undercount fully by just linking, which we thought we were going to be able to do originally. Then the interesting thing is that this is common across all of the benefits. When we did the same linking process and segmentation process, we've got the same kind of undercount post-linking across all of the benefits. Some variation, of course. And you can see at the bottom there, the remaining undercount that we've got, you know, on average, is, yeah, we're solving about 65% of the undercount, but there's 35% that's remaining. So what we did then was we looked at grossing to see if we could resolve the undercount. So we got an experimental working grossing regime, which, in addition to all of the current gross for control totals that we got on the long-standing control totals we got on the FRS, we added all of the main benefits as control totals, but then we realised that pushed the employment estimates out. So we added RTI controls for employment, which in turn pushed self-employment out. So we've added self-employment control totals as well. So that's the kind of basis we're working with now to produce a final version for March 26. There may be some variations on our approach here, and there was some more detail on this in our publication last year. So putting all of this together then to see what we think we can achieve with integration of administrative data for benefits. All of the detail, of course, will be worked out with the teams working on the individual publications, like the exact impact on HBAI remains to be seen. It's been, you know, we're working on it now through the summer and autumn. But for using a universal credit as obviously, yeah, the most important DWP benefit as an example. So again, in 22-23, the average caseload estimate across the year was 4.9 million, and the pure survey gross estimate is 3.1 million. When you link, you end up with 3.8 million, and then we use the revised grossing methodology to get something which matches. Obviously, we're using that 4.9 million as a control total, so we got a grossing regime that works with that control total added to get 4.9 million. And then when it comes to the actual monetary amounts, if you look at mean monthly awards, the administrative caseload has got £704 as the mean award. The pure FRS survey estimate is higher than that at 818. Just integrating the min data was 723. And then when we add the extra control totals to make sure we match the 4.9 million, we end up with 695, so quite close to the 704. And then, another way of looking at this is on total expenditure. So if we just multiply out the average caseload by the average amount, we get 41.5 billion, which is not far off the actual published DWP expenditure tables at 43.4 million. And you can see then that the pure caseload estimate from the FRS at 30 billion is considerably less than that. And then we've got the intermediate stages then, but yes, the key thing is that integrating, linking and revising grossing gets us something in total monetary amounts captured, which is approaching what the actual expenditure is. So I will leave it there for now. Thank you very much.
We're a little bit short of time, aren't we? So I'll be fairly quick. To use a phrase from a popular computer game, Among Us, I'm not a crewmate, I'm an imposter. Because I'm going to talk to you about admin data to do low income and poverty stats, although not exclusively. So if you call me an imposter, you have to put something in brackets, as all good analysts usually do. So just 3 slides. Illustrative only. We're still interrogating the data, developing our approach. When people claim UC, they have to provide fairly comprehensive income details. Almost all sources of income they have to report and are taken into account in the calculation. So we have fairly comprehensive income data. We also have fairly comprehensive housing costs data, at least we do for all renters. I'll come to owner-occupiers for one of the other two slides. So therefore we can do decent BHC before housing cost incomes and also AHC after housing cost incomes for UC recipients. It produces a distribution similar to what you can see on the right hand side, and then if we put a poverty line in there, we can basically say which families are in and out of poverty above and below the line. That's the absolute poverty line after housing costs that we've put on there, because even though this is March 25 data, as you can see, and even though HBAI, the latest data is 23-24, you know what the absolute poverty line is for 24-25 because it's uprated by CPI. It's the 10-11 line updated by, well, actually a bespoke measure of inflation, but you have those measures of inflation. A relative poverty line, we'd have to make an educated judgment on how we guesstimate that for future years. But it's admin data, so it's obviously fairly up to date. Anything else I want to say on that? Again, obviously you can split by children and by adults, and we'd probably report then poverty rates separately as well as collectively for children and adults. So what would be published? Probably the initial format would be something like the off-the-peg children in low-income family statistics. So geography's down the left-hand side. You can go as low as you like for geographies because it's admin data. In the first instance, we'd probably just publish for local authorities and parliamentary constituencies. In due course, we'd want to put it on Stat Explorer, and then you can just drill up and down to your heart's content. We'd probably do separate local authority and parliamentary constituency tables. I've just put them under each other for the purposes of this slide. Different time periods along the top. Again, this is not like annual data. We could do this monthly if we wanted to. In practice, probably quarterly, just because of processing times. And yeah, what else do I want to say? Yeah, the second bottom bullet point, hopefully it's fairly obvious. This is just for universal credit claimants. Not everyone in poverty is on universal credit. So it doesn't give you overall poverty rates. It just gives you poverty rates for people on universal credit. Last slide then, and then we'll see if we have any time for questions or not. If we go down the left-hand side, you've heard that before. Look at the Stats Work programme for official communications. But there's a key point there. We'll probably not include the back series before April 2025 because of universal credit rollout. I think it was Kate who mentioned that. It's still going on during 25-26, but it's most of the compositional change is done by April 25. So we think we'll have fairly consistent trends from then. Probably go every 3 months after that, and we can do. We're blessed because it's UC data only. The only thing we'd need survey data for is to do the poverty lines themselves, and we can impute them. Everything else on the left hand side I think has been covered. So if we go to the right hand side, annual data, no issues with seasonality. In terms of when people are interviewed during the year, we already adjust for that, deflate for that in-year deflation. But we've got a similar issue for the admin data. So broadly speaking, all things being equal, people get an increase in April or May perhaps by the time the data comes through, the first monthly payment period after inflation, and then effectively they get a cash hike in their amount which stays the same for the rest of the year. Meanwhile, inflation is actually happening. So in terms of poverty, you'd get the opposite effect if we didn't do any adjustment, where you have a reduction in poverty every April or May, and then it slowly ticks back up till next April and May, and then it goes down again. So we have to decide if we want to do anything about that. We've talked about the poverty lines. For absolute, it's straightforward. For relative, we might have to make a judgment. We've talked about the second bottom one. So just to finish with then, we've got very good very comprehensive income and housing cost information, but not completely. The main source of income that's missing is child maintenance. That's disregarded. If you get child maintenance, you keep it. It isn't taken into account in the UC calculation. For housing costs, we've got about 80% where people are renting. So we have to decide what we're going to do about the other 20%. We could try and impute, or we could leave it with a caveat. And whilst you might think leaving it is a bit of a sweeping assumption, there will be quite a chunk of those owner-occupiers who actually don't have any housing costs, whether that's because the property's owned outright, or whether that's because, for example, a young adult lives at home with mum stroke dad, and they don't have any housing costs themselves. The parents are paying basically the mortgage or the rent or whatever it happens to be. So it might be a reasonable assumption in some cases. Do actually remind me about, probably said somewhere, but I've gone quite quickly, benefit unit level, household level, headline poverty metrics are obviously at household level. This data kind of obviously is at benefit unit level. I've had a look at the difference between a household level line and a benefit unit level line, and it makes a bit of difference, but not very much. I'm happy to talk to anyone in a bit more detail about that. So we could either do a small adjustment to try and go from a household level line to a benefit unit level line with benefit unit level data, or we could just leave it, use the household level one, and again make another caveat. Okay, that's all from me. Am I going back to you, Mitch, to see if I don't know if we've got time for any questions, but you're in charge.